Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram Hyahamahami Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hridi Vishamanasa Swam Chinvata Majjatava Pavana Chalanarudha Atmanishto Bhavatvam Dhyayet Sarada Chandra Sundaramukam Tamraravinde Kshanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojvalam Swatmanandarasanubhuti vivasham Sarvangavandhyatmakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Ramaneshwaram. Before we start the self-enquiry practice, we will read what Bhagavan says about self-enquiry, and then we will go ahead with the practice. I am reading from the book A Practical Guide to Know Yourself, Conversations with Sri Ramana Maharshi, which has been compiled by our founder president Sri A.R. Natarajanji. A devotee asks, what steps should I take as sadhana? Devotee asks, what steps should I take as sadhana? Bhagavan replied, that depends on your qualifications and stage. That depends on your qualification and stage. Devotee asked, I am going on with worship of a form of God. I am going on with worship of a form of God. Bhagavan replied, go on. That leads to one-pointedness. Get one-pointed. All will come right. People fancy liberation is somewhere and has to be searched for after kicking out of the world. Freedom is knowing yourself within yourself. Keep on to a single thought. You will progress. Your mind itself is the world. Bhagavan replied to the statement of the devotee saying that I am going on with worship of a form of God. Bhagavan replied, go on. That leads to one-pointedness. Get one-pointed. All will come right. People fancy liberation is somewhere and has to be searched for after kicking out of the world. Freedom is knowing yourself within yourself. Keep on to a single thought. You will progress. Your mind itself is the world. The devotee asked, my mind is being too much tossed. What to do? Devotee asks, my mind is being too much tossed. What to do? Bhagavan replied, fix yourself to some one thing and try to hold on to it. All will come right. Bhagavan assured, fix yourself to some one thing and try to hold on to it. All will come right. Devotee replied, I find concentration difficult. Bhagavan replied, go on practicing. Your concentration must come as easy as your breathing. That would be the crown of achievement. Go on practicing. Your concentration must come as easy as your breathing. That would be the crown of achievement. Devotee asked, celibacy, sattvic food, etc. are all helpful, are they not? The devotee asked, celibacy, sattvic food, etc. are all helpful, are they not? Bhagavan replied, yes, all that is good. Then Maharshi is silent, gazing at vacancy and setting an example to the questioner for him to imitate and follow immediately. After telling that all these sadhanas are good, Maharshi is silent, gazing at the vacancy and setting an example to the questioner for him to imitate and follow immediately. The devotee asks, do I not require yoga? Bhagavan replied, what is that but concentration? What is yoga other than concentration? Said Bhagavan. Devotee, to help in that, is it not better to have aids? To help in the concentration of the mind, is it not better to have aids? Bhagavan told, breath, regulation, etc. are of much help. Bhagavan replied, yes, these aids are helpful. The devotee asks, is it not possible to get a sight of God? Devotee is asking, is it not possible to get a sight of God? Bhagavan replied, yes. You see this and that. Why not see God? Only you must know what God is. All are seeing God always. Only they do not realize it. Find out what God is. People see and yet they don't see because they don't know God. Bhagavan replied for the question, can I have a sight of God? He says, yes. You see this and that. Why not see God? Only you must know what God is. All are seeing God always. Only they do not realize it. Find out what God is. People see, yet they don't see because they do not know God. Devotee said, should I not go on with bhajans, nama japa, etc. when I worship? Bhagavan replied, yes. Mental repetition is very good. That helps with dhyana. The mind gets identified with that japa, and then you know that the real puja is to lose the one's individuality in that which is worshipped or revered. Ramana says, is for the question bhajans and nama japa, should I not do during worship? Yes, mental repetition is very good. That helps with dhyana. The mind gets identified with that japa, and then you know that real puja is the losing of one's individuality in that which is worshipped or revered. Devotee asks, is Paramatma always different from us? The devotee is asking, is Paramatma always different from us? Bhagavan replied, the difference is the view a man has now. The difference is the view a man has now. But by thinking of him as not different, you achieve identity. But by thinking of him as not different, you achieve identity. The devotee replied, that is Advaita, is it not? That is Advaita, is it not? Becoming oneself. Then Bhagavan replied, that is becoming. The thinker is all the while the same as the real. He ultimately realizes that fact. Bhagavan is asking, the devotee is asking, that is Advaita, is it not? Becoming oneself. But the Bhagavan answers, where is becoming? The thinker is all the while the same as the reality. He ultimately realizes the facts. I recently read a quote from Bhagwan which was shared in the group, where the Bhagwan says, we see various things with our eyes. How can we see the eyes? And the devotee says, we can see the eyes through the mirror. And Bhagwan says, that is what is the creation of the God. He says, the creation is only the reflection of the eyes. The God is not an object that can be seen, but the God is the seer himself. Just like how we can see everything with our eyes and we can't see our own eyes. But do we ever have any doubt that whether we have an eye or not? When we are seeing everything, there it is assured that there is an eye which is helping us see the whole world. Similarly, when we are experiencing everything, when we are thinking, when we are not thinking, when we are aware of ourselves, all this is possible by the presence of that supreme power, the Self, or we can call it God. And how to get connected to that God, how to realize that one is God. All these sadhanas that is given, the yoga, the bhajan and the nama japa and the concentration, meditation, all are for making our mind one-pointed. Because our mind is always scatterbrained, it is always going here and there, running behind every thought. Ramana says all these aids help us. And the aid that Bhagwan has suggested is as simple as breathing. When we observe our breath, in Upadesh Saram he says, Vayu rodhana liyate mana jala pakshivadroda sadhanam. He says, when you hold on to the breath, or when you observe the breath, that is the pranayama which Ramana suggests. When we pay attention to the breathing, we realize that the source of the breath and source of the mind is one and the same. And when we can pay attention to the source of the breath, the mind also quietens and it seeks its own source. And at that time, we have the focus that is required to enter the heart. The mind becomes pure. In Ramana Pancharatnam, Ramana says, Ahamiti kuta ayatiti anvishyanta amaladiya. Amaladiya is with pure mind. The mind without any thought. When it becomes eligible to enter the heart with a question, Ahamiti kuta ayati, from where is this I arising from? And we enter with that pure mind. Then when we will reach our true abode, which is the heart. And Ramana says, we are always that reality that we are seeking. But we are identifying ourselves with the thinking. We are identifying with thinking that I am different from God, or I am God. Everything of all these are concepts and the thoughts that are coming in the mind. So Ramana says, do not run behind these thoughts. As soon as the thought arises, quickly ask for whom is this thought and turn your attention towards yourself from where the thoughts are arising, and ask the question, who am I? And practice this diligently. Ramana, in the earlier questions, he told, how can I find concentration difficult? He says, practice and more practice. Only through practice that our mind becomes quietened and the mind becomes habituated, because he is so habituated to turn outwards, it will change its habit and realize its true nature is within. Its true work is to abide as the Self with diligent practice, the mind turns itself towards the heart, which is its source, and abides there. Until then, we need to have faith in the words of Bhagwan Ramana and keep practicing. Let us practice self-enquiry for the next 20 minutes. We are sitting for self-enquiry for the next 20 minutes. Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. We'll continue today's Tuesday Satsang with listening to the insights on Ramana Gita by Dr. Sarada.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, in this part of the satsang, we are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita, which is a compilation in 18 chapters by Ganapati Muni of Bhagavan's answers to several questions. And he has classified these questions and answers into 18 chapters, translating the questions as well as the answers into Sanskrit verse. And we are now meditating on the 14th chapter of these 18 chapters, which is called Jivan Mukti Vicharaha. And in the previous verse, which we meditated on, which is verse 7, in that Bhagavan has said there are no differences in liberation. So that verse is Samyat Swarupa Nishtaya Bandhahanischa Samyatah Muktireka Vidhaiva Syat Bhedastu Parabuddhigaha. He says that the Samyat Swarupa Nishtha, in whom different kinds of liberation were spoken about, the Jivan Mukti, the Videha Mukti, that is at the time of dropping the body, and Mukti in Brahma Loka or another Loka, that is hereafter. So, these three types of muktis are described. In Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan says Uruvam, Aruvam, Uru, Aruvam, Undrum. So some people say that liberation is with the body. Some people say liberation is without the body. Some people say liberation is with and without the body. All these arise only, all these divisions arise only when the ego is functional. So here also Bhagavan has told us, Bhedastu Parabuddhigaha. A person looking at a Jnani, a Jivan Mukta from outside will say, oh, this person was liberated while alive. This person seems to have been liberated at the point of death. And maybe this person will go to Brahmaloka and get Jnana. We don't know. All these are only thoughts of the onlooker. So from the perspective of Jnana, there is no difference, says Bhagavan. He had said that in the 7th verse. And now we go on to the 8th verse, where Bhagavan says, Mukto bhavati jivanyo mahatmatmani samsthitaha prana samavaliyante tasyaivaatra narashabha. So he says, when the person, the life force of the person who abides in the self while in the body is absorbed in the self even over here. So what he's saying is, there is no absorption after that. It is right now here. Vindati iha jivastu deivikaha. So this is the promise of Bhagavan. Jivan Mukti. So he says it is here Mukto Bhavati Jivanyo. Why the one who has become Mukta or liberated while alive, that Mahatma Atmani Samsthitaha is ever abiding, ever situated, ever seated, samsthitaha in the Atma, Mahatma, Atmani Samstitaha, Prana Samavaliyante. So, the life force of that person, which is absorbed in the self. What happens? Tasyavatra narashabha. So he is atra. It is not like he is going to get absorbed later. He is absorbed here and now. So what Bhagavan is giving is this promise of Jivan Mukti. One's life force can get back to the self here and now. One need not wait. What is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of here and now? If our life force can get absorbed. Normally, our thinking is only in terms of the future, the past or the future. We think tomorrow we'll be able to attain self knowledge. After 10 years, we'll be able to attain self knowledge. So, when we sit for our self inquiry, also, we sit with the basic concept. I'm going to sit for 15 minutes, I'm going to sit for 1 hour, I'm going to sit for 2 hours. And then after that, what am I going to do? I'm going to get up and become the same person who started the self inquiry. That is our plan. But what is Jivan Mukti? Jivan Mukti is the availability of liberation here and now. So the question people will ask, is it possible? Can we overcome our samskaras, all our tendencies within the split second and get Jivan Mukti here and now? The point is, such a question is also rooted in identity and in time. One needs only to remain vigilant. The point of time when one breaks the barrier of time and becomes liberated is not known to us. So, all we have to do is to remain vigilant without either thinking that I will not get or thinking that I will get, but only remain in the self, says Bhagavan. And then he talks about the glory in one way of the Jivan Muktas, what all siddhis, what all occult powers may come to them. That also Bhagavan describes over here to give us an impression, an idea about the glory of Jivan Mukti. Because we think that so many things are worth achieving. We think everything in this world is worth achieving, other than self knowledge, or more important than self knowledge, not equally also important. So, Bhagavan is saying how glorious is a Jivan Mukta. He is giving us the concept over here. Jivan Muktasya Kalena Tapasah Paripakatah Sparshabhavopi Siddhasyat Rupe Satyapi Kutrachit Sparsha Abhavo. Meaning to say, they become intangible, you can't touch them. Now we have the story of Prabhulinga, which is given to us by Bhagavan. A very beautiful story of Goraknath and Prabhulinga. Here saying sparsha abhavo, they become intangible, they become untouchable. Sparsha means touching. Sparsha abhava means you cannot touch them. In what way can they not be touched? In a description, in the descriptive manner, if we look at it, in the gross manner, if we look at it, the body itself becomes intangible. It is like air, it is like ether. So, this is the story which Bhagavan gives of Prabhulinga and Goraknath. So, this Goraknath was a yogi, and also he practiced certain herbal medications by which he could make his body very, 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 very strong in every sense of the word. That is to say, it became so strong that the body was not touched or could not be destroyed by the five elements. Apparently, it could not be destroyed at all. He went into the earth and meditated under the earth for a long time. He meditated under the water. He meditated surrounded by fires and winds. So, it was that he had conquered the elements by having the proper herbal medicines. And he decided that he would never die, that his body had become, the body was itself immortal. The body was indestructible. So, at that point of time, Allama Prabhu or Prabhulinga came that way to his ashram because by divine sanction it appears that that Gorakhnath was truly a ripe soul who had fallen away from his sadhana, the real sadhana of recognizing the self, and decided to perpetuate the body. Now, when Prabhulinga came and Gorakhnath offered his salutations to him, Prabhulinga said, "What can I say to one who is actually perpetuating the body, which is jada?" And Gorakhnath was a little upset, obviously. All his sadhana was being questioned. So he asked his disciples to bring a very, very sharp sword. And he gave the sword to Prabhulinga and he said, "You can cut my body at any point. Try cutting my body." And Prabhulinga tried cutting his body, but it was of no use. And the sword only became dented, but nothing happened to Gorakhnath's body. Then Prabhulinga told him, "Now you, O sage, you cut my body." Gorakhnath said, "I don't want to kill another sage. I don't want that sin." And Prabhulinga said, "Why do you worry? I am telling you to cut." So he handed over the same sharp sword to him. And when Gorakhnath began, he swung the sword so hard and he was very sure in one swipe he is going to make Prabhulinga's body into two halves. But when he cut across, what happened? The sword just passed across the body as if it was air. He tried cutting it in several directions. Whenever he passed the sword through Prabhulinga's body, it just passed through as if it was air. Asparsha, sparsha abhava, says Bhagavan over here. And one is reminded of that story. And then Gorakhnath surrendered to Prabhulinga and said, "Oh, what a glorious person you are. That the sword just passes through you." So, in our sadhana, what is this sparsha abhava? We can become strong, we can become detached from everything. We may be untouched by the events of life. We may not break down when anything happens to us. That is like Gorakhnath, strong, adamantine, like a diamond, untouchable, unbreakable in that sense. But to be like Prabhulinga is to have no sense of body at all. So that that body doesn't exist over there. So he is asparsha. So Bhagavan says, when there is this is paripaka, tapasa paripakataha. When the tapas is ripe, when it is full, such a siddhi may come. Other siddhis may also come, says Bhagavan. Bhuyascha paripakena rupa bhavopi siddhyati kevalam chinmayo bhutva sasiddho viharishyati. That person may even have no body at all. And as pure consciousness, the person may move around as he or she pleases. Now we have an incident in Bhagavan's own life. Of course, many people, here he says that Charira samshrayam siddhor Dvayametannarottama alpenapi cha kalena devatanugrahat bhavet. All this may happen, he says, while in the body, by devatanugraha. It has nothing to do with that person. Everything is according to the divine plan. If God decides to make the person with asprasha, intangible, or having no form, able to move around as he pleases in consciousness, it is all Devatanugraha, but it does not make any difference to the liberated one. So, Bhagavan, there was an instance when Ganapati Muni went to Tiruvattiyur to do tapas. Although Bhagavan did tell him that he need not go and do tapas anywhere else, and self-enquiry wherever he was would be more than enough. But Muni had another purpose, he had some sankalpas apparently, and he was very well aware of his own horoscope, in the sense he knew what all his body had to go through or go wherever he had to go, and he went there and he was doing tapas. He was in a temple, in a Ganesha temple in Tiruvattiyur, and he was suddenly afflicted by a very severe back pain, and he lay down and he was thinking, Bhagwan, what a silly fellow I am. But where Muni was very childlike, very simple. So he thought, he was blaming himself also. I was such a stupid fellow, I came away here. You told me I could be there, I could do self-enquiry, but I've come here, I'm doing tapas now, I'm having this back pain. Bhagwan, I'm just missing you so much. And suddenly, he saw Bhagwan walking in. And Bhagwan came and spoke to him. And when Bhagwan touched him, his back pain also disappeared. And then after some time, Bhagwan left. Then later, Muni came and asked Bhagavan, did you actually come to Tiruvattiyur? Did you come? And Bhagavan said, you know what happened, Naina? I was in Virupaksha cave, I was lying down there, and suddenly I saw myself being lifted up. So Palani Swami was there. No, Palani Swami was there. He didn't see Bhagavan missing from there. But Bhagavan could feel that he said, I could see myself my body being lifted up, and there was a white light. And in that white light, my body started moving. And I thought, Siddhas must be moving around like this only. So when Bhagavan is talking to us over here, he says, Sa Siddho Viharishyati. They can move anywhere they please. Bhagavan has sort of indicated to us how it might be, and because he very sweetly, again, Bhagavan also so sweetly, as if he knows nothing at all, Siddhas must be moving around like this. So I thought to myself, and then I reached one place and I came down, the body came down to a road, and that road led to a Ganesha temple. And then I went in, I saw Muni, I saw Naina, I saw you over there. And then I came back in the same way. So this is what Bhagavan says. He says this such kind of siddhis can happen by divine grace, even in a very short time. But these differences do not mean any difference in liberation. One who abides in the self is liberated, whether in the body or not. So that's what Bhagavan says. Bhedametam puraskritya taratamyam na taratamyam na sampadi देहवान शरीरो वा मुक्त आत्मनि संस्थितः. The liberated one, whether he has a body, does not have a body, he appears to have a body, does not appear to have a body, he is ever abiding in the self. So Bhagavan will say, ultimately in the final verses of this chapter, he will say everything is only a projection. All these differences are projections. If you want me to define various kinds of liberation, because Vidarbha would have asked him, no, Vidarbha has asked him the question. So he is answering out of compassion. And why is he answering this out of compassion? To say, even in liberation, when the mind is perceiving something, the onlooker may see differences in the liberated people. They may see some powers, they may see the changes, they may see a variety. Whether it's in the, you see the liberated person, or you see an image of God, you see a big image of God, small image of God. We see one temple which is so crowded all the time. We see another temple of the same deity where one or two people will be hardly sitting there in a daytime, in a day. Okay, so anything that is manifest is subject to variations and differences. That is what Bhagavan is saying. But in the self, there is no variation, there is no difference. And to abide in the self alone is Jivan Mukti. That is our goal, to be liberated while in this body, Jivastu Daivikaha. And that is what Bhagavan promises us in his infinite grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri. Ujjwal, will you say the Dileep will say the concluding prayer?
Yes, thanks.
Nice.
Apara Satchit Sukhavarirashi Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihiram Hridhi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hridhi Chintayami.
Namo Ramana, Namo Ramana Dileep.
Namo Ramana, sir.
Namo Ramana Jagadamba ಅವರೇ, ಅಲ್ಲಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಭು ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಕತೆ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರ ಇವತ್ತು?
ಪ್ರತಿ ಸಾರಿ ಖುಷಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ.
ನನಗೂ ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.